Okay, I'm going to interrupt my interruption by napping some raw stuff here. I don't know if this is small enough, but I got a request to nap some small landscape type stone. So both of these are like landscape type stones, or if they're not bull gravel, they're very similar to bull gravel. Actually, this looks pretty good as far as quality. It looks pretty good. This one, I don't know, it's mystery, so we'll see what happens. I actually got two requests, one for the Levallois technique and the other one for just napping a relatively small cobble, but I'm going to try the Levallois technique on both. Now, I'll be using natural tools again. Oh gosh, where was I? I gotta nap some more of this rainy buttes, and then back up a little bit more when I get back to glass. I got a project I'm working on that requires some glass components, obsidian also. Alright, so hopefully this will be the last interruption of the interruptions. Alright. The Levallois technique is very old, right? I think it was used by Neanderthals 300,000 years ago, starting out. It's pretty old, right? And supposedly it was independently developed in different areas of the world at different periods of time. So what I think happened, in my opinion, the Levallois technique, or the Levallois technique as they say in the UK, was developed as a direct percussion method of producing flakes, whereas the blade production of later time periods, the Neolithic, the blade production is indirect percussion with a vertical punch or a vertical striker. The Levallois technique is a direct percussion technique. Now, there's not much to it, right? It's pretty straightforward. If you want to make flakes with a direct percussion technique, you're going to have to zigzag around the edges. You can well, no, you don't have to. You can strike off in one direction, which I think they did do during the process of producing Levallois flakes. But for the most part, you begin with just zigzagging around the outside. And what that does is remove the cortex. Pretty straightforward, easy to grasp as far as concept goes. They say that this type of technology required language to teach. I seriously doubt that. I think that is absolutely wrong. Language is not necessary to learn or teach this technique. The reason why a lot of the researchers say that language was necessary for this technique is because it's not intuitive. Again, that's completely wrong. I think the whole technique is nothing but intuitive. How else are you going to make flakes off of this with a direct percussion technique? So it's completely intuitive. And that's how it was able to be invented in various parts of the world in different times, independently, without prior knowledge or seeing it done. Okay. So basically I'm trying to get rid of the cortex by striking platforms that'll allow me to remove flakes easily. Doesn't take very long to learn how to do it. Just bang on a few rocks and you'll figure out, well, I guess the only thing to do is hit some opportunistic platforms, and it starts to break in a very predictable type of manner. And there are Levallois flakes that look similar to this, but they don't have cortex. There are long ones. There are all kinds of shapes, so it's difficult to categorize, but they've tried, and it looks a little bit too complicated for me, both in terms of learning it and the ridiculousness of it. It's ridiculous how complicated they make it seem. It's pretty straightforward. You're just removing the cortex all the way around, and you have you're creating a biface that's a little bit more rounded than in later times. But you're still creating a biface, you're flaking both sides. And no one knows how fast they develop these cores, if they were done within a few minutes or over several minutes. So that's something to take into account. I'm just looking for a good place to strike that won't mess up my hammerstone. I could beat on that right there and probably split my hammerstone in half if this didn't split. And these Levallois cores were not very big. Coincidentally, just usually big enough to fit in the palm of the hand. So I'm going around. This is called the Centripetal Technique. Centripetal Levallois. Pretty nasty. As far as cortex goes, the quality of the stone is not too bad once you get past all the cortex. In a minute here, I'll show you what these lakes look like down there. Some of these strikes are requiring a lot of energy. I mean, a lot. So that's a classic move there, where you strike and try to develop a long flake. Right. Sometimes it necessitates preparation, sometimes it doesn't. I've seen flakes of all sorts. I just looked at a bunch of flakes before this video. That's a classic flake removal for the Levallois technique. These can range in shape and size, but the cores end up usually about the size of the palm of the hand, and they may be discarded just like this, unless I can find another place to remove a flake. A lot of these can be utilized for their sharp edges. I've seen a diagram where flakes are similar to this and similar to this, and of course anything with a sharp edge can be utilized. But most of this stuff down here has cortex in it. Not very useful, except perhaps a good luck charm maybe. I've seen flakes of all sorts of sizes in the collections, but the most common that we think of when we think of the Levallois technique is this arrangement here. And this would be the utilized flake here, and there's a debate whether these are utilized or not. There's a lot of these cores just sitting there, or appeared to be just sitting there, not used. I might be able to take one more flake off of this that is a pretty substantial size. Off of this end, so I'll see. Not really. We'll try one more time. Yeah, it's pretty much expanded. And I may be able to get another flake off of this side. But it's lost most of its mass, so I'm having a hard time countering the strikes from this stone. Alright, so there you go on that one. I can utilize these flakes or go in the heat treat, either one. Same thing with this here. I'm going to just find opportunistic areas for direct percussion reduction. Nothing complicated. I think the researchers have done a lot of complicated studies that are not necessary on this type of technology. Ooh, that actually looks pretty good. Not too shabby. It does have crystal pockets. I can tell it might have some issues. I'm going to separate this from the other batch. The other batch over here, that can be worked raw. This stuff, I bet you it can be worked raw, but I think it becomes very nice if worked heated. We'll see. Alright, so I don't know if I'll be able to develop a good core out of this, but I'm going to try. I can develop some good flakes that can be utilized. Not that one. But the more cortex that's removed, the better it starts to look. Yeah, that's not bad quality. That's pretty good stuff. So this is not the usual landscape stone material. Yeah, I think I jumped the gun a little bit too soon. Took off a big old thinning flake too soon. But, you know, a lot of these flakes can be utilized. I should probably go out and get another stone, because I didn't reduce this very well. Not with the Neanderthal technique method. It's reduced okay. I can make points out of these, but to demonstrate the old type of flaking, I probably need a bigger core. And I probably don't need to heat treat this. At least not for simple points. For deeply notched points, yeah, probably. Would this work better with a billet? It might. But I think most of the Levallois cores were reduced with hammerstones. That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, these flakes can be utilized, these little ones. Extremely sharp. Yeah, if you just want to cut stuff, you can use these little flakes. You got to be careful. The back sides are often sharp, so you have to hold it in the middle and do whatever. Some of them are backed with Cortex. I'm not sure if this particular technology took advantage of these backed flakes. I didn't read that much on it. I didn't read up that much on it. Anyway, let's see if I can reduce this with natural materials, get a little biface out of it, and hopefully that first stone demonstrated the Levallois technique better than this one here. Okay. Would it work better with a larger billet? Perhaps, but it would shock my hand a lot. Well, it doesn't matter if you're not a wimp. Yeah, I know. Let's try to get a heavier one. Let's see. These are Elk Antler. Yeah. They're pretty substantial. Not as heavy as moose. This is not easy rock. It's just some of it is high quality, which means it's very consistent. But I wouldn't call it easy to nap. Okay, let's try the moose antler with some skull bone attached. It's pretty heavy. Noper. All right, let's see. What else we got in the bag of tricks? How about a very long swinging billet? This is a Elk Spike I use for indirect percussion on this end, but I can also swing it with this end here. Let's see. Get some speed on it. Yeah, that doesn't work too bad. Yeah, speed's always good. Just don't know if it'll cooperate. There we go. That's a big old crystal pocket. See if we can blast that out of there. Not too shabby. Interesting little piece. Faster I can get this billet going. I'm holding it way down here. That's, I don't know how long. Let's see. 7 or 80 millimeters. That's how far I'm holding it back, and it is generating quite a bit of speed. Now, why don't I work all my stone this way? Because it eats up my tools. Look at that. This was all like this, right? It was undamaged. Just with this one rock, that's how much damage I've done so far. It just eats through the tools. More precise strikes on heated stone with indirect percussion conserves on your tool material. That's why I don't nap like this every time. Although it is effective, you know. If you got the material, then go ahead and do it. Taking a risk snapping the whole thing, right? But it's pretty solid, and I'm just barely striking that platform, so it's not pulling very much. And with speed, I can sneak up on it take a flake off before it knows what's happening. Oops, I got a little leak. I don't know where I got that. It's on the very tip of my finger. Yeah, that's distracting me. That's my excuse for knocking off the back part of it. I hit too high up on that platform and knocked off the backside. Yeah, I don't usually work small raw stones for the reason it's just not any fun. But it can be done. That flake is just stuck. So yeah, I'm gonna stop. Excuse me, I'm gonna stop right there. I gotta hammer out a little point from that, as long as that doesn't go too far in. But basically, it's a high quality in some areas. Like this one is, I can knock out a little point out of that. And I do have a request to do some flake points, but I don't like working raw, tough, raw, thin flakes because of the amount of pressure required. It's probably why people want to know how to do it. But the amount of pressure required to notch a difficult material or a hard material, it will snap the point. It'll snap this material very easily with the amount of pressure that you need to create the kind of notches that most people want. And this is probably very good for the flint and steel crowd. Yeah. Very easy to make sparks with it. Now this over here, the Rainy Buttes, is sometimes it'll spark and sometimes it won't. I gotta find a strong area and see how it goes. I don't know, could you see that? It was a small spark. So it does spark somewhat. I hope you can see that. Right, you can see that? Let me see if I can look in the viewfinder and do this. And once you get past the sharp edge and you start crushing the edge, the sparks don't fly any longer. But you don't seem to have the same problem on the other type of flint. Yeah, that one, it it can get dull, but it still showers a bunch of sparks. But this one, once it starts getting a little dull, very few sparks. Okay. So, and it leaves a deposit of residue for the rainy buttes. It leaves residue on your steel striker, or whatever you call that. Okay. So what would I do with this, just to wrap things up? I would heat treat this and continue working it with indirect percussion, and make a point like this out of it, which is, it's reasonable for an lattice dart point. Okay, let me just get a thumbnail shot. Alrighty.